Let's grab our Bibles this morning. We're going to jump right in. We're in our new series called Timeless Worship for Every Generation. If you don't have a Bible this morning, there should be one underneath the seat in front of you. We're going to invite you to join with us in our tradition as we hold up our Bibles and say this prayer and this creed together before we dive into what God has for us today. So let's hold them up and let's say this together. Here we go. The Bible is the Word of God. The truth of the Bible will change my life. Lord, open my heart and awaken my mind and give me grace to respond. Change me for your glory and my joy. Amen. Please turn to Psalm 145. If you use one of those Bibles from the seat in front of you, it's somewhere around page 495, Psalm 145. We'll get there in a minute. This new series called Timeless Worship for Every Generation kind of takes us out of our little moment on the timeline to what worship has always been understood to be by the people of God. And we're trying to answer this important question. The verbiage that for the last almost 400 years that the Church of Jesus has used is a question with a quick answer. What is the chief end of man? What's the top purpose, the main reason, the chief end of man? Is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. If that's the goal, that's the point, that's the chief end of all of this thing called living, then how do we do it? And not just like, how do we do it generically, but like, how do we grow in that? Because I believe it, like everything else in the Christian life, is typically not a light switch, and it's not just up and to the right and perfect growth. It's a bit of a roller coaster. And so how do we mature or grow or disciple as glorifiers, as worshipers? And the question is not so much, how do I feel worship? What tradition did I grow up or denomination did I grow up in? What feels vibey to me or most comfortable to me? Not what's my Enneagram number or my temperament type. What if our worship was shaped more by God than all of that stuff that has to do with self, that has to do with us? That's the question we're seeking to answer by looking at, in the Old Testament, which was written in Hebrew, there are 7 Hebrew words that are just translated with the one English word, praise. But as we kind of lay those on top of each other, maybe kind of build a quilt of praise together with those 7 pieces. I don't think I've ever said the word quilt before in my whole life, till just right now. Patchwork together of the 7 Hebrew words of praise to be able to get a full picture of what it means to praise God the way He says He wants to be praised. This week's Hebrew word is the word Yada. Star Wars reference number 2, not Yoda. Sorry, but it would be very wise of us, see what I did there? To learn, and if you don't know anything about Star Wars, no, you don't see what I just did there. Maybe for all the children of the 90s in the room, when you hear Yada, your mind goes to Seinfeld, not Star Wars, and you hear yada, 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 and there are multiple verses where yada is repeated. I haven't found one where there's 3 of them, but I have found a bunch of verses where it says yada, yada. Twice this week, my wife has been telling me a story, and she's been like, yada, 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 and I've just been like, oh, I'm preaching on that this Sunday. And if you don't know that Seinfeld reference, I think I'm supposed to say Temple Ministries does not endorse all of the content of that show. Okay, so the reference is that George is dating a girl who leaves really important information out of stories by just going yada, yada, yada. So the irony of all the Seinfeld fans in the room is that yada is not something that we rush past the details by or leave out the important parts. Yada is actually something that we slow down this morning and say, God created us to do this. This word's important to Him. So here's the definition of yada, used 111 times in the Hebrew Scriptures. It is to praise or revere or worship with extended hands. To throw, as in a stone or an arrow, and I'm just taking this definition from people a lot smarter than me, but I don't think you throw an arrow. I'm not super woodsy, but like maybe Popeye could. Like he had... Anyways, scroll, sorry. I'm just telling you, that's this definition. It kept coming up and everything about an arrow. To give thanks and to confess. This is yada. So, I heard that some of you were like, we should get t-shirts that say halal y'all from last week. If you weren't here, go watch last week's sermon on YouTube. Well, this week's t-shirt would need to read, let's throw hands for Jesus. Like on the back, it'd be like, let's throw hands for Jesus. And you could like even put Yoda on there, who's like, whatever. Okay. So sometimes when we're like a little intimidated or something we know might not be received well, we'll use the phrase of, I'm just going to throw this out there. Well, this is the picture that's being painted of what this version of praise is, only it's actually physically, we're just putting it out there. We're throwing our hands in response to God, only we're not just throwing it out there generically. We're throwing it to the throne room of heaven. Like before the presence of the living God. That's throwing it out there, right? And what I love is we know what it is to extend hands. Like we know what this one is. It's visible. Which means when it comes back to this idea that this idea of timeless worship, these words are used in the imperative form, which is a command. And so the great thing about last week versus this week is last week we can be like, no, I really do feel rowdy on the inside, but there's really no gray. Either our hands are being obedient or they're not. Right? Every parent in the room knows what I'm talking about because don't touch the stove. They're either being obedient or they're not. Right? We know what obedient hands are. If you have more than one child, you know what obedient hands are. Stop touching your brother. We know what obedient hands are. And I love the visibility of this. A couple months ago, which by social media standards is a century, a couple months ago, there was a series of videos that went viral where wives were videoing their husbands watching sports and then putting praise music underneath it. Did any of you see these videos? Let me introduce you to one right now here in church. That mustache is giving me Jeremy Bailey vibes, you know? For better or for worse. So do not do this now, but later today I encourage you just go down that rabbit hole. While you're doom scrolling on a Sunday afternoon anyways, look up husband watching sports worship music. I love, okay. But honestly, I was a little offended the first time I watched it. Because I'm like, I wish that's what that dude would look like on Sunday morning. I hear from people, I'm not expressive like that. I'm not emotional like that. That's just not how I worship. And then they'll watch their sports team, and we stick a different soundtrack underneath it, and we're like, really? It exposes our hypocrisy when it comes to expressing what's important to us. Touchdown, field goal, whatever. So as funny as it is, I hope that it's a little bit convicting if we claim to call this stuff the good news. Timeless worship is visible response. Remember, we don't initiate it, we're just responding to it, to who God is. He's Yahweh, Yahweh. A God merciful and gracious and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. That's who He is, and that's what He does, and that means something for us. right? And that demands a response. We're talking about throwing hands as a response to who God is, to what God's done, and to what that means for us. And as we finally get to the text now, we're going to hang around the Psalm 140s a little bit this morning. 3 quick observations. The first one is timeless worship is visible response of celebration. That video postured us well for visible response of celebration. And here, this celebratory language of Psalm 145, Yahweh is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in chesed. We covered that from Exodus 34 in our last sermon series. If you didn't track with that, you can also catch that on YouTube and learn about the name Yahweh and how it changes everything. That's the most quoted passage of Scripture in the Scripture by the Scripture. And here's one of those moments. The Lord is good to all, and all the time. Do you believe that this morning? He's good. His mercy is over all that he has made, which is everything. And all your works shall give thanks. Will yada to you, O Lord, and all your saints shall bless you. Bless is not yada, it's a different word. We're not going to get to that word for a few weeks, so we'll circle back to bless in a minute. But all the stuff you've made is going to throw hands toward heaven because you're good. We've got a reason to celebrate. This is one of those psalms that's more well known than some of the other psalms. One of the ones that maybe is a little bit less known is just a couple songs to the left. Psalm 141 verse 2 says, accept my prayer as incense offered to you. That in worship, there's even the smell of incense being offered as praise and worship to God, right? And my upraised hands as an evening offering. These offerings were to be offered 3 times a day. They didn't have digital iPhones in their robes back then, but we think this is right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon that there was the evening prayer or the evening offering. And here's what's super cool about David's hands in Psalm 141. We believe that song was written by David alone in a cave when life looked awful. He's on the run from his own son. Ain't no hurt like family hurt. Absalom's trying to kill him, take the throne from him. And so he's alone and his hands are still raised. So for some of us, one of the reasons we struggle to raise our hands is we're afraid, oh, it's hypocritical. And David's like, no, I do this when I'm alone too. Because he also wrote Psalm 145, right? So in the congregation and alone in a cave. When life's great, when life's not so great. He's worthy to be praised. You know, the definition of hypocrisy is acting like something that you're... The definition of hypocrisy is acting like something that you're not. You're the blood-bought, born-again children of the living God. So when we don't yada, that's actually hypocritical. Yeah, you had a bad Tuesday. Welcome to the club. Tuesdays are worse sometimes. Yeah, and he's worthy to be praised. That's real. That's who we actually are. We respond. How's this for public praise? The temple's being dedicated to the glory of God, and Solomon stood before the altar of Yahweh in front of the entire community of Israel. That's pretty public. He lifted his hands toward heaven and he prayed, oh, Yahweh, God of Israel, there is no God like you in all of heaven above or on the earth below. There ain't no God like our God, Yada. One of my favorites is Psalm 67. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face to shine upon us, Selah. I don't know how long Selah is supposed to last. We're just going to wait a minute. Selah means hit pause, park there for a minute. It means marinating that thing before you flip. Like, anybody like the sound of that? Like, anybody want to sign up for the God be gracious and bless me and like sunburn yourself this direction? Anybody want a little of that today? Yeah, same. But if we read that, it starts to get the Instagram me and Jesus with my candle filtered, like super isolation, like God give me my stuff that I need and want, right? Which is why the context of this is so important. God, open the windows of heaven, pour out your favor that your way may be known on earth. Your saving power among all nations. That's zooming out the lens pretty far. Let the peoples yada you, O God. What peoples? Glad you asked. Let all the peoples yada you. And we believe there's coming a day where all the peoples are going to praise him. The reality is, this command to worship is visible and public, and it's for everybody regardless of temperament or comfort zone or tradition that you grew up in or denomination that you grew up in. We're so scared of being rowdy that we've become dead and cold. And Yada is like, no, we're throwing hands today. He's God. He's worthy to be praised. And the amazing thing is, when we yada, the earth knows God. When we yada, the peoples are like, what's up with them? The most evangelistic thing we can do, specifically on a Sunday morning in this room, is every week there's people here who are like not super sure, where am I at with God? I don't know. I'm on this journey and I'm trying to figure stuff out, and that's awesome. You are so welcomed here. But may the tone and the temperature of this room be, man, this joker next to me seems really convinced. Like, I don't know what I believe about all this, but this chick over here, she's like losing her mind. She like really thinks her battles have already been won. I want what she's got. Man, this dude took his hands out of his pockets. Right? Like, holy Moses, I think the dude smiled. He must be super convinced that God saves the lost. Throw hands. Everybody, all the peoples. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul is teaching young Timothy how to do church. And he says this, in every place of worship. Oh, I love that. Because he's talking about 1945 in East Fort Worth, when a group of Jesus followers started hanging out and said, let's call ourselves Temple, which is super weird because Christians don't go to temple, we go to church. But that's what they decided was a cool name in the moment in 1945. And they're like, hey, let's just do church, right? Paul meant that church, which is us today, if that wasn't obvious. I want men to pray with holy hands lifted to God, free from anger or controversy. P.S., by the way, that'd be really fitting for 2026 for 15 minutes for the love. But that's not the focus of this morning's focus. That every church, everywhere, people would be like, woo! Why? Because he's better. He's better than a daggum touchdown. Because, as a matter of fact, he much better, he is, Psalm 60, because your steadfast love is better than life. That's better. That's a lot better than all the betters that we've ever bettered. He's better than life. My lips will praise you. I'll bless you as long as I live. In your name, I will lift up my hands. Psalm 44, you are the one who gives victory over our enemies. He's the serpent crusher who disgraces those who hate us. Oh God, we give glory. That's halal. It's as close to dancing as you're getting. To you all day long. And constantly, yada, your name. A response to the one who gives us victory. Because I've known that I was going to preach yada for a while now, as we've gotten closer to today, I've just been noticing hands on my news feed. A few weeks ago, Artemis II did a little loop around the moon and came back. Pause. If you need your faith to be fueled, listen to what some of our atheist astronauts are saying about Yahweh right now. Just go check that out after you look at the worship mockery. The commander of the Artemis II, Reed Wiseman, the picture, the thumbnail on my news feed of him coming back to the planet is Yada. Another thumbnail was about Usain Bolt losing his world record in the 200 meter to an 18-year-old kid. And the cover picture on the thumbnail wasn't the 18-year-old Australian kid who beat his world record. It was Usain Bolt with his familiar pose. That's his constant celebration pose. You know what? That's literally, dude's throwing arrows. Last Sunday, I did what I do every year. It's the only day of the year. Sunday, the week after Easter, is the only day of the year I watch golf on television. It's my tradition, unlike any other. I watch the Masters on Sunday. I don't love golf. Matter of fact, I the other thing, golf. I love Topgolf. Now that's fun. Connor Moore taught me how to play Angry Birds at Topgolf. 2 grown men playing Angry Birds. We had no kids with us, and we're playing Angry Birds at Topgolf. It's great. Real golf is snooze fest. But the Masters is just amazing to watch. And Rory McIlroy was trying really hard to lose the Masters last Sunday. That dude had an incredible, historic lead going into Sunday and was literally like, how do I not win? He tried so hard. And so I'm watching the tail end of this, and he finally finds a way to win. And you know what he did? He yada'd right in front of God and everybody. I think the most memorable yada I've ever seen in my life as a child of the 90s is from the person that sadly I looked up to more than like my youth pastors as a child, and that was Michael Jordan. 1989, May the 7th, The Shot. It's just called The Shot. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah? Watch this video. And then, yada, 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 yada. He just about punches that poor guy that nobody knows who Sellers is. He about yadas him in the jaw. It's awesome. The GOAT done yada'd after hitting the shot. And since none of those are Texan athletes, I have one more screen for you where Nolan Ryan yadas, Dirk yadas, and then Tom Landry is doing a combination of halal and yada. Because when there's something great, it's instinct. Do you know nobody ever had to tell Michael Jordan, hey, when you hit that Game 5 winner to advance to the playoffs, when Chicago had had nothing but heartbreak, and it's going to literally seal your legacy as Mr. Clutch. What I want you to do is throw hands when it's over. There was no meeting. Nobody told him that. It was just a response. And so I don't want to make you uncomfortable, and this isn't about rules, and this isn't about legalism, but I want to ask you a question this morning. Has God been good to you? Then throw hands. All right, let's try this again. Class, whom has experienced the goodness of God? Yeah, me too. That was a little halal also. You get bonus points. Congratulations. Everybody gets an extra 5 points on our quiz today. Victory deserves a visible response. The next two are going to be a little quicker. Timeless worship is visible response of celebration, and number two, of desperation. Before we get back to the Psalm 140s, Psalm 28 verse 2 says, "Listen to my prayer for mercy as I cry out to you for help, as I lift my hands toward your holy sanctuary." And maybe this morning that verse resonates with you more than the victory verse does. Psalm 89, "My eyes are blinded by my tears. Each day I beg you for your help, O Yahweh. I lift my hands to you for mercy." Psalm 146 should just be across the page from Psalm 145. And man, I love this verse. "I stretch out my hands to you." Why are my hands doing that? Because my soul thirsts for you like a parched land. Linger in it, hit pause, marinate on that, Selah. My hands are just a response to what's going on in my soul. It's when the teacher says, "Do this assignment. I'm going to be walking around. Just raise your hand if you need some help." When I was in math class growing up, and the teacher would put a problem on the board or make us go to the back of the book and look at section 4C, say, "Work on those problems," I'll be walking around, "Raise your hand if you need help," before I got a pen out. I ain't looked at the problems yet, but I know it's math. And I know I don't know, but I know I need help. There's not been a single Sunday in 17 years I've not walked into this room with you in need of a visitation from God. Sometimes it's been desperate. And sometimes it's not been super heavy. But I've never walked in here a single Sunday and been like, "I'm good, I need nothing from God." So if you're passing by and handing out help, over here, a couple Wednesdays ago, we had a president of a university speak in our chapel, and he gave out some t-shirts. And like, these students don't even know what the t-shirt looks like. They've never heard of that university before. They have no interest in ever going there. And they're like, "Oh, I want whatever you're giving out just because it's free." Like they're going to leave it in their locker for the rest of the school year. Oh. One of the reasons I believe God's called me to preach is so that I don't have to serve in kids ministry. Thank you to all of our Temple Kids volunteers. I'm so grateful for you. One of the things I've learned in the disasters of when I've taught kids is I'm way too interactive and they don't actually want to answer my questions or understand what I ask, but they all want to be called on. It's like they all have the spiritual gift of derailing the momentum of where I'm trying to go. Because they just want to be seen. And then we know, those of us who are parents, what it is when our kid is sick or hurting or scared, and all they want is just to get to mom or dad. Nobody ever had to tell them, hey, reach for them. It's just the response of their souls. And that's yada. I read an article this week, another way that AI is changing the world. There's a company, you need to hear the name of this company. It's called Just Like Me. They have built interactive AI bots to represent all of the world's major religions, including an AI bot version of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, where you can pay $49.99 a month to get 45 minutes of interaction with an AI-generated bot representing Jesus. And I am horrified that the name of that is Just Like Me, but isn't that just like us? But it sure does show the reality of being human. Is we're so desperate, we'll spend $50 a month just to try to get some face time with God. The reality is it doesn't take $50, it takes 5 fingers. When I was growing up, there's the old song, it's me, it's me, it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Only a couple little gray heads nodded on that one. That's yada. So, maybe you walked in here today barely holding on, or you're like, life's pretty much okay. I just hope it keeps going okay. I want to invite you to be the kid in the classroom who acknowledges they need some help, not as a performance, just in honesty, not out of legalism or demand. But I want to ask you a question. Who needs something from God today? Me too. Where's the big old pile of yada? Timeless worship is visible response of celebration and visible response of desperation. But a lot of days don't feel super celebratory or feel super desperate. They just feel kind of routine. And so what do we do in the middle? Timeless worship is visible response of surrender. Proverbs 28, verse 13, people who conceal their sins will not prosper, but if they yada and turn from them, they'll receive mercy. One of my favorite definitions of confession is to agree with God. God, you said don't, I did, you're right, it was bad. That's the eloquence of confession. God, you said do, and I didn't, and you're right, I should have. That's confession. Parents, have you ever parents of multiple kids, you ever walked into a room that was a mess and said, who did this? As though they're going to be like, it was I, Father, not my siblings. You can walk in and the kid's actively making a mess, and they'll be like, is that one? Yada is like, no, I made this mess. No more playing or pretending. I'm tired of holding on to this. Here's honesty. When we watch the old school Western and the bad guy walks up, stick him up. And yada is I surrender. Here's a white flag. No more games. No more holding on. Lamentations 3. Instead, let us test and examine our ways. Let us turn back to Yahweh. Let us lift up our hearts and hands to God in heaven. Hearts and hands. Our hands are just following our hearts. So back to our text, Psalm 145. In the middle of our 3 verses for this morning, the Lord's gracious, he's merciful, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all. That's why all of his works will yada him, because he's good. We will not open our hands to him if he's not good. Psalm 136, yada to Yahweh. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. The reason we pry open our hands and we trust him and surrender to him is because he's good. If he's not good, we better hold on. But if he's good, we can trust him. Some of you have sat in my office and you've heard me do this exercise with you before. We can live life pretending to have control, or we can live life in the freedom and joy of surrender. But we don't cross over from control to surrender any other way than the bridge of faith. We trust that he's good. If we don't trust that he's good, we'll just keep white-knuckling this thing and making a mess of it. Or we'll trust him. God, I trust you. I don't have to pretend to control. I don't have to pretend to have it all together. I trust you. Bob Goff said, what if the thing that's been holding you back isn't something you need to fix, but something you need to release? So I want to invite you to do something that might feel vulnerable or might feel uncomfortable. And I want to encourage you right now to put your hands out in front of you, palms up, not lifted high, just open before God. And that is yada. That's what that is. And instead of raising your hands high, or instead of being halal and rowdy about it, here's the question for this one. Who believes that God is worthy of trusting today? Who believes he's good? Then we yada. We surrender to him. When we worship together, I want to remind you there's at least 3 things your hand can do. They can celebrate. They can cry out, God, I need you. And they can just surrender, God, I'm releasing to you the thing I walked in here carrying. I'm not asking you to be somebody you're not. I'm asking you to let God be who he already is. This week, we've got another exercise we're going to send home with you. As you're leaving today, you can get a copy of it as you're leaving. If you want, there's 5 this week. We just did it with an acrostic for the word yada. And so if you want, you can pick one a day or do them all on Tuesday if it's a lousy day, whatever you want to do. The steps are simple, that you would practice visibly praising God with yada. If you're not used to praising God like that publicly, what a great thing to start test driving privately. If you are doing that while you're driving, please only one-handed yada. Because I don't want to be called to testify. My pastor told me. Yeah. The encouragement is to practice that this week, to yield your hands to God. Second thing is to answer, to actually think about something God has done, to write it down, and then to extend your hands and tell God, thank you. Next is to ask God for what you need. That's that desperation. Is there a thing you need in your life? Then open your hands and call that out. Stretch out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you. A is the idea of abandoning, letting go of what's a thing you need to lay down or surrender. Maybe it's a sin. Maybe it's a control issue. What do you need to lay down? H is I want you to listen, find an arrangement of the song, I Surrender All this week, and let it be part of your soul's soundtrack this week. I Surrender All is the timeless, even though it's only 130 years old. It's the older song that we're inviting into today's conversation this week. It was written in 1896 by Judson Van Deventer. Judson Van Deventer was an artist, born in Michigan, and had a lot of potential, became an art teacher. Everybody kept telling him, you've got a potential great career in art. However, he served at his church. God kept stirring his heart for revival, specifically for the lost being saved. He had a passion to see people come to know Jesus. And he was in this tension, and he wrestled and went back and forth for 5 years. Art or evangelism? For 5 years he wrestled. And this is what he wrote. He said, at last the pivotal hour of my life came, and I surrendered all. And a new day was ushered into my life. I became an evangelist and discovered deep down in my soul a talent I didn't know before. God had hidden a song in my heart. And touching a tender chord, he caused me to sing. And he wrote the words to I Surrender All. The song birthed out of 5 years of wrestling. 43 times in that song, or that poem, the word all is used. He had no idea that he had a song, a different expression of art, until he said, God, I trust you. And what's amazing is, if you've ever read Billy Graham's legacy story, he talks about the song I Surrender All shaping his life and heart and ministry. His autobiography, his name's Just As I Am. I'm like, did you read it? Because it should have been named I Surrender All. That song had this huge impact on him. Think of the people who heard the story of Jesus because of Billy Graham, because an art teacher, Yadad. The potential of our praise is staggering. So we trust him. Here it is.